Murphy from FS Securities, an education and information firm on the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia. And every Monday morning I go through what happened globally around the world and try to forecast what we may see these coming weeks. I'll show you how investors and traders may make money on our stock market and globally. I'll show you what is hot and what is not, and what you should hold and what you should fold. So let's start and see what happened on Saturday morning. On this side here, you can see that the Dow was up 60 points. The day before was up 377, and 2 days ago, that's on Thursday morning, was actually down 512. So overall, the last 3 days we are still in the negative. The S&P 500, that is the broad S&P 500 index, was up 11 points or 0.4%, another rise the day before. However, 50 points dropped 2 days ago, so really we are slightly in the negative. The Nasdaq also had this similar performance. On Saturday it was up 71 points or 0.8%. In Europe, the Stoxx 50 index, which comprises most major European markets, was up 0.4. In London, the FTSE 100 index was up 1%, and in Germany the DAX was up 1.2%. Nikkei index in Japan was up 0.6%. In China, it was the Shanghai index was down 0.3%, a negative day the day before, and you can see that over the last 3 days it was pretty negative performance on the Shanghai index. On our market on Friday, we were up 1.4%, 76 points, and however we lost 93 points the day before, and then another 2 days before we actually gained nearly 20 points. So really we can see more or less that our performance was almost steady over the last 3 days. Nothing really gained extremely high. Well, what happened is that we've got now the futures this morning showing possibly a rise of 24 points at the start of trading. Gold had 3 beautiful days. $16.60 3 days ago, 2 days ago $21 up, and then on Saturday it was up $12.60 to take the gold price to 1,753 US per ounce. Silver had very good performance the last 3 days. You can see here 0.3%, then another 3%, then another 5.6%. So nearly a very good rise for silver. Brent oil also had 2 beautiful days, up nearly 13% over the last 2 days. And West Texas crude oil also had a very good 2 days, nearly 16-17% rise. If you follow soybeans, because that's what's really happening between China, as long as China is buying American soybeans, we've got here the price dropped $2.50 per bushel, another $2.50 a day before. Oh, sorry, there hasn't been a change here. 837. So no change in the price. I'm not really sure. Maybe the soybean was not traded on Friday. Okay, when you talk about the US dollar and you look at the Australian dollar versus the US, 64.1 when it was 64.5 3 days ago. The euro, 59.3 euro cent versus 59.7 a few days before. British pence, 52.9 versus 52.76. Okay, and for those people who follow Bitcoin, I just want to let you know that Bitcoin on this morning actually was trading around 9,670. That's an up 415 overnight, and that will convert to 15,090 Australian dollars, up 660 Australian dollars. Let's have a look at the chart for the Dow. You can see here that's the weekly and that's the daily. That was the highest point we've seen around the 29,300, I think, for memory, down to 18,000. And what happened is that had 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks of major declines, and then you've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 weeks to recover 50%. Actually, it recovered 50% earlier, and for the last 5 weeks it's been hovering around the 50%. We call that, as technical analysts, the Gann 50% retracement. If it goes above it and stays above it, obviously it's going to hit the Fibonacci 62%. Otherwise it might go down to the 38% Fibonacci retracement. Now, of course, when we look at those charts, we've got two most important indicators. The red dot here, you've seen the red dot going all the way down. That is all bearish. And then after so many weeks, it started to decide, well, I think, we put the long term versus the short term. And now we've got the first red dot, which is actually the parabolic stop and reverse indicator, which shows it's the first bullish indicator for this particular weekly. And the stochastic down on those weeks started to recover and then somehow went sideways. So bullish, neutral, again, and then you've got the 9 weeks below the 21 weeks, that's bearish. So you gotta really be careful. The market is volatile and could go anywhere you want. The daily, however, give us a little bit of insight. The parabolic stop and reverse, those red dots showing a bearish, and then we had bearish stochastic and it's trying to revert. It converged, and if it crosses above the red line here, that starts to be bullish. Again, I would say it is a very dangerous prediction to be able to know whether it's going to go up or down. Again, a lot of things can happen. Of course, you've got some maneuvering by the White House. They always want to paint a good signal about the future. However, the economists will have to analyze what's happening. Remember, the Federal Reserve, Jeremy Powell, indicated that he doesn't see the economy recovering before the end of next year, despite Mr. Trump believing that everything is going to be hanky-rosy just before his election. So don't forget to vote for him, guys. I wouldn't personally. Anyway, in terms of what happened over 2 weeks, I think it's important to see here, those two columns here, the change in points and change in percentage. And then I like to actually consider the change over last week with the change over the last fortnight combined, the 2 weeks combined. For instance, you look at the Dow, was down 2.7% last week. However, when you put the 2 weeks together, it was almost steady, unchanged. So obviously 2 weeks ago we had a good rise. Last week was a down. So together we only have a slight drop in the market, less than 0.2%. However, the Nasdaq, even though it dropped 1.2%, by the way, I actually am rounding off those figures. It was down 1.2%. However, over the last 2 weeks was up nearly 5%. The broad S&P 500 index, again 1.2% rise over 2 weeks. The US dollar gaining 1.3% over 2 weeks, slight rise last week. The Australian dollar was down 1.8% last week. However, had a good week the week before. Remember, it was trading at 65.3 US cents. However, it dropped to 64.1 US cents. That is actually 1.8% drop. However, the 2 weeks together, when you compare 65 to versus the week before, all the weeks together, it's only slightly unchanged. Now, in terms of gold, look here. Gold last week was up $50 US. That is actually a huge rise over 1 week. That is nearly 3%. However, the week before we had a slight drop, and when you put the 2 weeks together, we still had 2.6% rise. So obviously this is a very bullish 2 weeks in a row. Silver, look at what happened to silver. 8.2% rise last week. 2 weeks together, 13.2%. Went to 1706 for when it was 15.8 US per ounce 2 weeks ago. Light crude oil, that's the West Texas crude oil, 51% rise. Big rise last week and even a bigger rise the week before. So don't forget, West Texas crude oil is sitting on a very strong bullish trend at the moment. Is it going to find some resistance? Again, what we try to tell you here, even though the mechanical system and the figures tell you one thing, you need to realize that the market doesn't go in a straight line upward or straight line downward. So remember, you've got to really look at the chart and see where the resistance and supports are, because the trend can very easily reverse temporarily or for good. So it's time to look at your trades and maybe take some money out. Now, okay, I told you what happened with the currencies, and now have a look at our market. This is actually the ASX 200. We can see here that we've done exactly more or less like America. We, over 5 weeks, we dropped quite a bit, and then in the reversal we couldn't get up to 50% again like the Dow. There are two things we can say: either the Dow overpriced itself, and I like to remind you that the American market PE ratio is about 20 multiple. That is actually one of the highest level for many years, and there is no doubt the American market at the moment, on expectation of rise, it's either that the price is too low or too high, and the expectation of the earning in the future is going to be too high. So a 20 multiple, that is actually extraordinary, when the average over the last 20, 30, 40 years was been about somewhere in the range between 15 and 18. So 20 is pretty high. Now our market, on the other hand, who knows, is it going to go up to 50% retracement, or is going to really find that resistance around the 38.2 Fibonacci? The 50% is not a Fibonacci retracement, it's actually a Gann retracement. And by the way, we run courses at FS Securities to teach you how to trade and how to look at charts and how to pick signals from the charts. So if you're interested, all you have to do is call us and we'll give you the details later on. Again, here there is one important factor for long-term investors. These are the 50-day moving average, the 100-day moving average, and the 200-day moving average. Obviously, when it's bullish, this orange line is above the pink, and the pink is above the black. However, as you can see here, long-term trend, because of we've seen the signals over the last several months, pushed the prices down, and obviously the moving averages have been pushed down quite a bit, and now we see the 50 below the 100, the 100 below the 200, and that is the bearish signal. However, when you look at those red dots, the parabolic stop and reverse, bullish. However, the stochastic is bearish. Blue below the red line is bearish. Those red dots below the candles is bullish. So again, we have conflicting signals, so it's neutral. So our mechanical system that we have designed over many years for the investor, we look at the monthly chart against the weekly chart, and we look at least minimum 5 indicators out of 8, either telling us bullish or bearish or otherwise neutral. And if the signal from the monthly chart is, for instance, bullish, we need to have 5 out of 8 indicators on the weekly to confirm that particular trend. Remember, the monthly chart changes once a month, the weekly chart changes every week. So for the long-term investor, we look at the monthly and the weekly. For the conservative trader and aggressive trader, we look at the weekly and the daily. Okay, so look at the weekly signals, and what we've got here, the Dow is now appearing to be bearish after being slightly bullish for the very aggressive trader 2 weeks in a row. So obviously there is a change in the momentum and the sentiment on the Dow. The Nasdaq 2 Saturdays ago was extremely bullish across all type: investor, conservative trader, aggressive trader, very aggressive trader. And on Saturday morning it continues to be bullish for the investor, of course, because it's a long-term charts that we're looking at. However, the shorter term charts has gone neutral, so be careful. There could be a change in momentum for the Nasdaq, possibly. And when it comes to the broader S&P 500 for the very aggressive trader, we had bullish 2 weeks ago, and on Saturday now we have bearish for the very aggressive trader. If you go across here to the daily forecasts, you can see here that we're still bearish for the Dow. By the way, these are the same as the last, what we see on Saturdays. They are corresponding to the same thing. However, when we look at the day before, we see that we had more bullish for the Nasdaq, and again we can see that it turned neutral on the bearish for the Nasdaq. Now, in terms of gold, you need to see that gold is now a lot stronger on the bullish side across all investors. And by the way, on Thursday we put a paper on our website about trading Newcrest Mines, and again we're going to put another one on silver today. So keep an eye on our website, because you're going to see a recommendation on how to trade silver, which is the one that maybe can actually be a better performer. Now, when you look at the 2 week performance on our market, at the closing bell and over the full week, our market was up 0.25%. That is actually over the last week. However, when you put the 2 weeks together, we've got 3% rise over 2 weeks. Our market, that is our market gauge, the ASX 200, is made up to a great extent by two major sectors, that is the financial and the materials. When both of these sectors go bullish or bearish considerably, usually the market drags the rest of the market with it. However, 2 weeks ago we've seen the financial up 0.5% and the materials was up 7%. And the gauge, the ASX 200, which comprises the top 200 stocks, was only up 3% last 2 weeks. Across all sectors last week, we're going down that column. The 8% happens to be the highest, which is gold. I understand why. And 20% rise in the index of gold. Then we go down and see what other sectors have performed well. 3%. Yeah, the metal and mining also had 2 good weeks, followed by communication. Communication went up by nearly 5% over 2 weeks. On the bearish side, the most negative number, I guess 2.43, the energy. Interestingly, because oil continues to go higher, however energy decided, no, we're going down. And when you look at Santos and Woodside Petroleum, well, Santos was down 5% last week. Here we go. And Woodside Petroleum was down 3% last week. So is that an indication that the price of oil now has gone too high and could be a reversal? Well, that's interesting. Could very, very possibly be the case. Okay, so in terms of our stocks here, over the last 2 weeks, Newcrest Mines was up 20.2%. Where is the highest number after 20%? Maybe the 7% and the 6%. AMP and BHP over the last 2 weeks had two blue columns, blue lines, rise of 2.5 AMP last week and 7.43% over 2 weeks together. Telstra, because of communication, yeah, it did also very well. 6% 2 weeks together, 4.6% rise last week. Okay, if you want a copy of this slide, it will be on our website. Now, our sectors here, if you look at the daily, we are very bearish on the financial. So if you're trading banks, and we know that ANZ, CBA, Westpac and National Australia Bank all had 2 bad weeks, and you can see here that is actually showing. This was actually on Thursday morning and this was on Friday morning. Consumer staples also showing red here, that is actually bearish. Gold, don't argue with gold. Gold is very strong bullish, you know, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday and Saturday. Are we going to continue to see that? Again, these indicators are showing the trend, and the trend is your friend until the end. The end can only be maybe picked up by looking at resistance and support, and we can teach you how to look at signals and find out where the resistance and supports are on the charts. Now that is actually the daily. Again, ANZ was bearish, CBA was bearish, NAB was bearish, QBE continues to be bearish 3 days in a row, Westpac bearish, and Worley, an engineering company, bearish. Newcrest Mines turned bullish on Friday, but neutral for the long-term investor. I think you'll probably find that that column, that point here, will turn blue in the next couple of days, provided gold continues to outperform the market in the next couple of days. We like to look at volume, and you can see here the volume has been very steady around the 2.5 billion transaction. That's daily transactions. And you can see here advances in blue versus declines in red. On Friday we had 35% of all the stocks rising versus 22% declining. However, when you look here, that is the weekly advances over declines. We had 3 very strong bullish positions. We performed very well. Remember, after the major catastrophic drop in January, February, March, we recovered. However, we started to see the market starting to drop in terms of advances versus decline. And last week, the declines exceeded the advances to a ratio of 51.9%, so slightly above. Okay, on Friday, as a matter of interest, these are the company who had reasonable performance. Saracen Mineral Holding had 7% rise, Evolution Mining 5%, Ansell, the company that makes condoms, 6.2%, and rubber gloves and so on. All Search had 3.3%, Newcrest Mines 3.7%, Coles had 1.2%, and all of these figures are available for you on the website. Again, on week, we like to look at the stocks that outperform the 50-week average volume. As an example, well, to start with, before I go on to the bottom section here, we start with the top 50, and we look for any stock that had last week a volume exceeding the average volume over 50 weeks. There were none. On the downside, we also like to see companies that actually went down with volume exceeding the 50-week volume, and there were none. Now, when we look at the mid-cap, for those more aggressive, Kogan last week, the price of Kogan went up by nearly 1%, and the volume was 130%. And to explain that, the weekly average volume over 50 weeks is 4.4 million. Well, last week we've seen 10 million transactions. So excessive volume over the average 50-week volume, and then we see the price increase. This company here, GrainCorp, had a price increase of nearly 9% and 71% increase in the volume. In other words, 11 million transactions per week, average 50-week volume, and last week we've seen nearly 19 million. So higher price, higher volume, we need to investigate this company. And on the downside, again, we look at companies that had major price drops and increase in the volume. When the price drops and the volume is increasing, that means it is actually bearish. So again, this will be available to you on the website. Now we look at the daily volume. Over the last 50-day average volume, Newcrest Mines, on average, has 5.3 million transactions per day. On Friday, we had 5.9. But on the weekly, we haven't seen Newcrest Mines appearing. So that was actually 1 day excessive volume. Not a great deal, only 12%, against 5.3 million transactions per day. We've seen 5.9, and the price went up by 4.2%. So again, that's why we decided on Thursday to put a paper on Newcrest Mines, and that was available also. If you go to our website, go to our picks, and you will find Newcrest Mines. And today we're going to put one on silver. Now for the mid cap, going down this line, this company here, Genworth Mortgage, was up 17%, and instead of 1.1 million transactions per day, had 1.7 million. This company here, AMA Group, and Alacer, we're looking at Alacer as well. We might be putting a paper on Alacer. Had a price rise of 7.5%. Again, we need to look at what happened the day before and the day before. Okay, well, in terms of stocks that providing ex-date, Macquarie Group today is offering $1.80 to its shareholders, and that is actually the final dividend, and it's an increase because the last price, by the way, was $105, and the yield is about 4%. That's what better than the bank. Macquarie has done extremely well the last few weeks, gone up and giving you a nice return on the dividend. Orica, I don't know why Orica is appearing here twice, ORI and ORA. However, you've seen here dividend of 16.5 cents and 37.3 cents. Obviously there are two types, and one is offered on the 28th, and maybe there is another one, an extra dividend coming in June. So at the moment trading, yeah, that's actually, I think that's the option, trading at $16, and the dividend here is about 3% yield versus that one 5.4% yield. Joyce Corporation is offering 7.2%, and we've gone past Janus. That's the 15th, that was last week. Okay, I want to finish off by telling you that everything we said to you here, the presentation was prepared for general information only and does not take into consideration your investment objectives or your financial situation and your financial circumstances, and we don't know what risk appetite you have. So any person intending to take any information from this document should seek professional advice to confirm that the investment or strategies meet your strategy and meet your investment and also risk appetite. Remember the charts showing the trend. Additional analysis may tell you if the trend is no longer your friend. And if you're concerned about a possible correction on a large fall in the market, you may always take insurance against it. And for more information, you may want to talk to us. I will tell you how. If you have any questions, by all means, you can write to me at George@FS Securities. That stands for Full Service Securities. George@fssecurities.com.au. And if you're ringing from overseas, you put 61 for the country code. You don't need the 0. Overseas people ring 61-411-259526. My mobile is available, always on. I work 7 days a week, and I'm always available, provided I'm not playing tennis or playing bridge or playing backgammon or actually at the movies if there are movies opening soon. But anyway, 411-259526 for the local people. Okay, well, all I can say to you, that's me. Have a good week, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. And if you have any feedback, please give us some feedback, and happy week.